Hey there, I'm Amy from thecrazycraftlady.com. I'm so excited to share today's video with you. The Dollar Tree party aisle is one of my favorite places to shop for unexpected craft supplies, and so today I challenged myself to grab some new party aisle supplies and make them into crafts for fall. Let's get making. For this craft, I started out with 2 party bowls from the Dollar Tree party aisle, and I just gave them both a quick coat of white matte spray primer or spray paint just on the outsides of them. It doesn't have to be perfect coverage, just something for your craft paint to stick to. Then I just grabbed my E6000 glue and I did little dabs all the way around the edge of one of those bowls, and then I flipped the second bowl right on top of it. And that way the 2 bowls stick together and make kind of like a sphere shape here, and that's going to be our pumpkin. So set that aside and let the E6000 totally dry and harden, and then you're going to come back with your craft paint. So this is just chalk paint. I like a more muted orange color, so I start with a bright orange with my 1-inch flat paintbrush, and then I mix in a little bit of light pink and like a tannish light brown color. It doesn't really matter what color you use as long as like it's something that you like that's fall colored, fall themed, I guess. You could paint these green too if you want to do like fairy tale pumpkins. And I do like to mix it on the project, not on a palette beforehand, because then you get a little bit more dimension, so it's not all one solid color. There are some sections that are a little lighter, a little darker, a little more variation, and I just feel like it makes the project have a little bit more dimension and maybe look a little bit more realistic or polished, I guess. So I painted all the way around the edges, and then I also painted the top as well with that same mixture of paints. And then you're going to flip it over and paint the other side as well. I like to protect my work surface with parchment paper. That way, if the paint hasn't fully dried yet, it won't stick. Your project won't stick to that parchment paper, which is nice. And so I just continued mixing paint right on the project until I had painted the whole of the 2 bowls. And then I grabbed a little stick from my yard. I liked this one. It had like a little wonky shape to it. And so I originally was just going to hot glue that to the top of my little bowl pumpkin there. But the twig wasn't sticking. There wasn't enough surface area for that hot glue to stick. So my little workaround there is I grabbed just like a little 6-inch piece of twine and I coiled it up between my fingers. I hot glued that down, and then the hot glue was able to stick between the twine and the plastic bowl and between the twine bundle and the stick, and that kind of made a more secure base for that stick, which is now the stem of my pumpkin. And then I added some curly cues, so this is just kind of like a jute. It's thicker than twine. It's decorative. I get it from Michael's, and it has just a strand of gold floss running through it. Wrap that around a pencil a handful of times to make a curly cue, and then hot glue one end right to the top of the pumpkin, right like at the base of that twig stem. So I ended up repeating this 2 more times, so I did a total of 3 little curly cues, and you can make them varying lengths, and then just kind of hot glue them in place and then drape them kind of over the edge of the side of the pumpkin there. And then I just made a very simple bow. I got this fall ribbon at Michael's this year. It's like a gorgeous, orange and tan buffalo check, but whatever ribbon that you like that you have in your craft stash. I just made a very simple figure 8 with your 2 little loops. I pinched it in the center, and then I cut another smaller length of ribbon, maybe 4 or 5 inches, and you wrap that around the pinched center of the figure 8 and secure it in the back with just a simple square knot. And that forms a very, very simple, easy bow. And then I cut the ends of the bow tails with a kite tail. I just fold it in half, cut at a 45-degree angle, and then very carefully heat seal with a lighter so that the little ends of your bows, your tail ends there, don't fray. And then you can just hot glue that bow right to the top of your pumpkin and you're in business. And here's my little party bowl fall pumpkin craft. Next up, we're going to do practically the same thing, just with little miniature bowls. So grab these 4-pack of little mini faux cut crystal decorative bowls in the party aisle at Dollar Tree. Give them a quick spray paint just on the outside with white spray paint or primer, and then we're going to get assembling. So these are a little wonky to assemble because they are wavy. I've actually done the same exact thing and made little mini bowl holiday bells, so I know it works. And so I just did a combination of E6000 and hot glue around the edges, and then you just kind of nestle those two bowls together as best you can. It's not going to be perfect. There's going to be a little gap, and we're going to cover it. I'm going to show you how. It's kind of a roundabout way, but I think the end result is super cute. And then I just reinforced that seam there with a little bit of extra hot glue all the way around since it is going to be covered up. Then I got to painting. This is the same paint color that I used on my large bowl. It's the three same. It's a bright orange chalk paint, a light pink, and then a light brownish tan color. On this, I went a little different direction and tried using a makeup brush, which I thought worked really well. I thought maybe a pouncer brush, my bristles were too stiff, and I didn't want to use a regular brush because I didn't want brush marks. So I used a little piece of a Dollar Tree makeup sponge, and then you just dab, dab, dab all the way around the bowl. So I started with that bright orange color, and then after I had a coat of coverage on that before it dried, I added in some of that light brown and that light pink color to give a little bit more dimension, kind of mute down that bright orange. I don't love super bright colors. It's not my jam. I love my neutrals, but if you want to do bright orange, feel free. It's your craft. Do what you want. You don't need my permission, right? And so I'm just going to speed this up. You can see as I'm mixing the colors, and I made two pumpkins here. So one I did a little bit of a lighter orange, and the other one I did a little bit of a darker orange, so they wouldn't be exactly the same. And then once that paint dried, you can see I have that little seam there, and I didn't think this through. I'm like, oh, whatever I cover it with needs to be orange. I was like, maybe I should have covered that seam before I painted, but I like my end result the way it worked out. So I took 3 lengths of twine, maybe 2 feet long, 2.5 feet long, taped the 3 at one end to your work surface, and then just braid all the way down until you have a little braid long enough to wrap all the way around that seam around the edge of your 2 little bowls there. So you don't need to see all this. I'll speed it up quite a bit. Here I have my 2 little braids, and then I used that same orange and light pink paint, and I painted each of the braids with that paint. I just kind of mixed it on the project as I went. I used a plain flat 1-inch paintbrush, easy peasy. And the reason why I say I'm okay with having done this after the fact, you could braid the twine, hot glue it on around the bowl, and then paint the whole project. But by painting the twine braids separately, I was able to get not complete coverage on the twine. And so a little bit of that twine showed through, and it gave it just a little bit more of like a rustic look and a little bit more texture. I feel like if I had painted it on the bowl, the twine braid would have gotten completely saturated with paint and looked a little funky, if that makes any sense at all. If not, ignore me and do whatever you want. Then I had to make my little pumpkin stems. So I wrapped some twine around my fingers like 10 times or so. You're going to trim that tail end, and then you're going to cut one end of the loop, but leave the other end secure. And then you're going to kind of give it a twist and soak that whole little bundle of twine with Mod Podge. I've done this before when I made velvet pumpkins. It works out really well. It's a quick way to make little faux pumpkin stems. Or you could hot glue a little piece of a twig to the top or whatever you like. But I just completely saturate that little bundle of twine with Mod Podge, give it a twist, and then you have to set it aside to dry, and it's kind of tricky. Like, if you want to set something heavy on each end so it stays in place, or if you want to tape each end down to a work surface or a scrap piece of cardboard, feel free. It just needs to kind of maintain that little twist shape so it looks like a stem. And then once all of that paint and Mod Podge had dried, it's time to fully assemble. So I just took my little braid and I hot glued it around that little wavy seam in my bowl pumpkin there. I used my little silicone fingertip protector so I wouldn't burn off my fingerprints. And just do a little bit of hot glue, smooth the braid over, a little bit more hot glue, smooth the braid over, rinse and repeat until that whole seam has been covered, and then just cut that end off with the scissors. Repeat on the second pumpkin, and then we have our little coiled twisty twine thing. I kind of cut the end of that twine stem at an angle so it's nice and pointy, and then you hot glue that right to the top of your pumpkin so it's sticking straight up. A cute little pumpkin stem, and then I very simply embellished with a little bit of faux greenery that I just hot glued right to the top of the pumpkin at the base of that stem there. Easy peasy. And then I repeated the same process on my second pumpkin and I was in business. And here are my two little mini bowl fall pumpkins. I love the texture of the faux cut crystal pattern on the plastic. I think this is just a super fun, unique pumpkin craft to make for fall. For this craft, you're going to want to start with a Dollar Tree oval faux cut crystal platter and a Dollar Tree calendar. So we're going to do a fall theme wall art here because the 12 by 12 calendar will fit right inside that oval. So what we're going to do is you're just going to spray paint the back side of that tray. I did this hammered bronze metallic spray paint just because it kind of color coordinated with the image that I was doing. You could also do like a big piece of scrapbook paper if you can't find a calendar that you like, but just pick a spray paint that kind of coordinates with what you like or your image that you choose. And then I just grabbed a scrap piece of brown craft paper here, and we're going to make a little template for the back of that oval platter to cut out your calendar page. So I folded it in quarters, and then I used a Sharpie to trace right around the edge of the oval tray there. I just added a couple dots of Sharpie, and then I just cut along that oval line, and then you can trim as you see fit. So I did the first cut, and then I smoothed down my little cut oval onto the tray, and I said, okay, well, here it looks a little wonky. It's not perfectly lined up here. So then you can fold it back into quarters and trim down as much as you need until you get your template to be exactly how you like it. Side note, someone once commented on my video that I was saying it wrong, that I was saying template, and they're like, it's template. And then I realized it's a Midwest thing. In the Midwest, we say template, I think, but everywhere else they say template. And so now I question myself on every video and I don't know what to say. So thank you for that level of anxiety, anonymous YouTube commenter. Anyway, I digress. So then you take your template, and you lay it over your calendar page there, and then just use that Sharpie marker to just trace that little brown paper oval right onto your calendar page. And then you can just cut it out very simply. So just cut right inside that Sharpie line so that you don't have any of that Sharpie showing on your calendar page image. Easy peasy. And then I was afraid to just secure that very thin calendar page right to my oval tray just because it does have all that texture with that faux cut crystal pattern. So I just simply used a school glue stick. I find that school glue sticks on calendar pages give me the least amount of bubbling and warping. Sometimes they can get tricky with Mod Podge and other adhesives because the paper tends to curl up. But I just smoothed that right onto my brown paper oval. So I used my little squeegee tool to smooth out any air bubbles and get as smooth of a finish as I possibly could. And then before I secured it onto the tray, I decided to add a little bit of texture detail to my tray. So I just cut a tiny piece of a clean dish sponge. I can speak. Clean dish sponge. And some antique gold rub and buff paint, and you just very lightly brush over. See how it's like ridged and there's texture there? So it's really easy to distress, and just add a little metallic finish there with that antique gold. Easy peasy. And then we're gonna glue. I think this step may have been overkill. The glue didn't really hold between the brown paper and the silver tray, or the plastic tray, but it did kind of hold it in place while I did the hot gluing, which you'll see here. So I wanted to cover that edge around the calendar page. So I used my metallic jute twine. So this is a roll from Michaels. It's jute twine with a couple threads of gold floss running through it. I just thought it would be nice to have that extra metallic detail, since I did distress the tray with antique gold rub and buff there. And then you'll see that hot glue that you're going to apply right on the edge between the calendar page and the plastic tray. And that's going to secure the image down when you add the twine over top. And then to make a little hanger, I flipped my tray over because you want to be able to hang this on the wall. And I just added a couple double knots to each end of a little length of twine. And you want it to be long enough that it doesn't hang. You don't want the twine hanger showing, so it needs to be short enough that it can just be on the back, and then you could stick it on a nail or a hook on the wall or on a door. And then just hot glue each of those knots inside the tray there. If this had been a flat tray and it hadn't been so deep, I would have just hot glued a soda pop tab. That's kind of my go-to for hangers. But because this was such a deep tray, I had to do this twine hanger, which worked out just as well. And here's my little fall wall decor made from Dollar Tree supplies. For this craft, you're going to want to head to Dollar Tree and grab one of these plastic little tiered party bowls in the party aisle. And we're just going to spray paint it. This is a bare chiffon cream chalk paint. Pick any color you like. This can be customized a million different ways. You can see I sprayed, I held it while I spray painted the base there, and then I set it down and I spray painted the sides. And then we're going to embellish it with some ribbon. So I have this plain cream kind of linen color ribbon. Use whatever you got. And I used my rubber stamps and a black ink pad, and I just stamped onto it, "Happy Fall, y'all." So this is a really great way to take inexpensive plain ribbon and customize it for any season or occasion. I've also done this with heat transfer vinyl, where I cut out the vinyl and I heat press it onto the ribbon. Super fun way to customize your ribbon there. Great for birthdays. And then for y'all, I didn't have the apostrophe, so I did a little bit of a exclamation mark, and I only dunked a tiny bit of it into the ink, and then I was able to fake an exclamation mark, because I think y'all is Y''ALL. You all. Yep, okay. Or as my grandma would say, "Use guys," because she was from North Dakota. So that was done, and then I had this orange burlap ribbon. So depending on what type of color of thicker ribbon you have, you can choose a different. Since I did this orange ribbon, I chose that cream colored spray paint. But if you're using a different color, say it's a ribbon with a cream colored background, and maybe you want to spray paint the base orange or green or whatever else color coordinates with your ribbon. And I just hot glued that orange ribbon all the way around that little bowl there, little dabs. Use your silicone fingertip protector so you don't burn your fingers. And then when you get to the end, you trim the tail end and hot glue it right in place. And then we're going to go over that with the hand stamped ribbon. So it's going to have there's not going to be a real front or back to this project, just because the words go so far around the bowl. So what I did is at that end where the two tail ends of the orange ribbon meet up, I just tied a very simple bow with my cream ribbon to cover that seam. So first I just hot glued down the 2 tail ends of my cream ribbon, and then I went back and made my bow. So I grabbed a few threads of that orange burlap from that ribbon, and then I made a very simple figure 8 with the cream colored ribbon, pinch it in the center, and use those strands of orange burlap, wrap it around twice, and then tie it with a simple knot in the back, and that'll secure your little figure 8 bow. This is the easiest way to make bows, it's just a simple figure 8. You don't have to actually tie it. And then trim off the tail ends of that orange twine. Trim your tail ends at a simple 45-degree angle, or you could do a kite tail where you fold it in half and cut at a 45-degree angle, either way. And then simply hot glue that bow right over the seam on where the 2 ends of the ribbon marry up, and that'll cover that seam pretty nicely. Then you're just going to fill your bowl with whatever flowers you like. So I just popped in a cube of floral foam and I started filling. These were sprigs from Michael's on clearance several years ago. I'm just trying to use up in my craft stash some older faux florals. I started with a base of greenery and then I added my flowers. After that, obviously you're going to want to pick flowers that maybe color coordinate with the color of ribbon or the spray paint that you chose for your project, so get creative. I just did a very simple base of faux greenery, and then I had these orange faux florals that I just kind of stuck in between the greenery at different intervals, and that was that. So this is a super, very simple fall floral centerpiece that can be customized with just about any color theme or any decor style. Also, I think could be customized for like literally any season. So put on your thinking cap and get creative and maybe make one of these for yourself. And here are all 4 of my finished little fall crafts together in one spot. I do hope you enjoyed watching these projects come together. Until next time, happy making. Hey, if you enjoyed watching these crafts, give one of these videos a watch. Thanks so much.